So Donald Trump just threatened to invade Nigeria. Now, is this a good idea? Short answer, intervention in Nigeria is probably better than intervention in Iran, or at least it's based in more fact. But Donald Trump was still completely unhinged in how he delivered it. As usual, he said he would go into Nigeria, guns a-blazing, making completely false arguments about things that their government has done. Now, I have some interesting Al Jazeera reporting on this. Some of it from a month ago when Bill Maher made the claim that the Nigerian government was doing a genocide, similar to what Donald Trump just said against Christians. And what they point out, and what any source that looks at the situation in a fair way would point out, is that the Nigerian government has myriad scores of Christian individuals. There's very little evidence that the government themselves is committing a genocide. It's all Boko Haram, and that's where the true part comes in. Nigeria is suffering from Boko Haram. They have done fairly successful military campaigns against them, though, which is another thing that Donald Trump is missing, right? The leader of Nigeria said that they would be willing to welcome United States assistance in taking out or minimizing Boko Haram as long as it didn't violate their sovereignty. And Donald Trump stopped saying like crazy things about the Nigerian government, just like he did with the South African government, right? There are sects of South African society which are extremely racist against white people, that literally chant for the death of white people. This is undeniable. That does not mean that there's a genocide being committed by the government of South Africa, and you have to tell the leader of the South Africa in your own Oval Office that they are committing a genocide against white farmers. That is obviously not a good thing to say, but here there is so much more legitimacy because Boko Haram is one of the worst terrorist groups that there is. If you didn't know, Boko Haram used to be part of ISIS, and they broke off from ISIS. Why? Because ISIS found out that they were using children for suicide bombings, and said that was too extreme for them. So ISIS drew a line somewhere, and it was with Boko Haram. Probably, the only terrorist group I know of off the top of my head that I can make an argument is more extreme than ISIS. And it is important to know which terrorist groups are more extreme than other ones, so we can justify intervention, right? I don't know anyone who would say that the United States interventionism in Iraq against ISIS was particularly bad. Like, it's pretty universally accepted as good because ISIS, the existence of ISIS is untenable to a peaceful world, right? So like that just completely destroys any like isolationist, complete non-interventionist policy, which is why I would be fine with the United States sending troops in to fight Boko Haram. Because what does Boko Haram do? They kill anyone who isn't a Sunni Muslim in their specific ideation of what that means. Now, I'm not an expert on that, of course, but this is where the Al Jazeera reporting shows its weaknesses. So they deny that there's a genocide being committed by Boko Haram, which is really, really weird. And you can draw some similarities here to how they cover Gaza, right? They say Boko Haram is not doing a genocide. They're simply killing anyone in their way of accomplishing, of achieving their Islamic State. So they're killing Muslims and Christians. That's true. They're killing much more Muslims. But the point is they kill Christians for their identity. And that breeds an argument for genocide. Now, it obviously won't be taken on by the ICJ because the ICJ deals with states. This would have to be a ICC situation or a UN court situation, like with a lot of the other genocides we've seen, for an actual genocide conviction. But ISIS has done genocides, right? The Yazidis in Iraq. That's a pretty well-known genocide, like non-controversial. So I think Boko Haram, you can easily make the case that they're doing genocide, and that is the appropriate term to use there. I just find it weird that Al Jazeera gets very, very picky with the definition of genocide when it comes to Nigeria, and they don't apply any critical thought to the definition of genocide when it comes to Israel-Palestine. they were calling it genocide 2 weeks into the conflict, or probably less than that. They were probably calling it genocide on October 6th. I was not following Al Jazeera reporting as of then. I was like a sophomore in high school. Actually, was I? I don't know. But they like a lot of other people just like really jumped the gun without any evidence, right? These terrorist groups that are actually genocidal make it very, very clear that they are genocidal. Even Hamas and Hezbollah go through the motions, and Iran go through the motions of saying that they don't persecute Jews. They are willing to have a Jewish minority in whatever state or jurisdiction they might hold power in. Boko Haram and ISIS are very, very clear about their intentions, right? ISIS has said things like Israel will be the graveyard of all Jews, and Boko Haram is even more extreme with ISIS than ISIS, though I don't have any quotes from the leadership off the top of my head. But all I know is that the person who broke away from ISIS did so on the basis of wanting to use children as suicide bombers. So that's all you really need to know. But I mean, they did accept the help though. If the United States quote unquote respects their sovereignty, which is a legitimate issue for Nigeria, right? Because they did see Trump make very wild claims against South Africa and wild claims against their own government, which has a ton of Christians in it, by the way. And I would understand why they wouldn't trust us going into Nigeria, guns a-blazing, as Trump said in his tweet. Even if they truly did just want help fighting these terrorists. And they've done a pretty good job on their own. I think I already went over that. But that's all I really wanted to talk about with this. The Al Jazeera piece I'm talking about actually was before all this happened. It was a debunk of Bill Maher. When Bill Maher was saying, oh, all these people are calling Israel-Palestine a genocide. I'm going to look at, when this happened other times in the modern day. So I'm going to say Nigeria. There's genocide in Nigeria, so don't pay attention to Israel-Palestine. It was kind of a hand-wavy thing. Bill Maher is as guilty of bias as Al Jazeera is, of course, in this conflict. It's much like when Bill Maher, when he's confronted or has mentioned the displacement of Palestinians in 1947, and he says, "Oh, but there was displacement of Jews," and it's like, well, if the Jewish refugee problem and the Jewish diaspora throughout Eastern Europe from the Holocaust was not solved by the state of Israel, then we would theoretically be fighting for whatever injustices Jewish minorities might be facing throughout the world, instead of advocating for the injustices that the current Jewish majority state is committing. So it's like ignoring one atrocity in favor of one that has nothing to do with it, because all these events stand independent of each other and they're all pretty objectively bad. But I just can't wait to see how the libertarians respond to this. Did anyone seriously oppose? Did Dave Smith oppose us fighting ISIS? Did he oppose that? Because Dave Smith and the other libertarians who just want nothing to do with any interventionism. You know what would be interesting? Tucker Carlson, his only moral kind of thermostat, or thermometer, not thermostat, is how many Christians are dying. And if that number is significant, then I bet he'll advocate for intervention, right? His metric for if we should have helped Stalin after Hitler did Operation Barbarossa, it was, Stalin killed Christians, even though Stalin probably didn't have a religious motivation. He was just a violent secular atheist, really. That, he might be in favor of intervention in Nigeria. Who knows? And that would be a interesting ideological question for him to answer. And I look forward to seeing how he answers that, and how the right wing generally responds to this. I bet most of the modern day neocons will be very, very happy with this. And the interesting response would be from the Marjorie Taylor Greens, I want to see like how did the Young Turks respond. I haven't looked at that yet. I know it's mostly positive, right? I saw Nigerians actually in the comment section of some of the coverage on this, saying how much their country needs to be invaded by the United States because it's a complete mess. The government is absolutely corrupt. I don't want to understate that. There's absolutely probably problems with the government maybe not doing enough or being persuaded by anti-Christian groups too much. And that is something that I don't have the depth of knowledge to comment on. All I know is that most of the conflict is being caused by these terrorist groups. There's also, the Al Jazeera article points out, there's also other modes of conflict. This is what I mean when they get like oddly defensive about Nigerian deaths, and try to blame them on something other than killing due to identity and extremism. There are farmer-herder conflicts, land conflicts, stuff that does not have to do with ethnicity and race, if I'm to trust Al Jazeera, which I've seen this reporting elsewhere, so I see no reason why I shouldn't. That's basically what's happening there. I mean, if the United States military does its job competently, then I don't care. Interventionism is not wholly bad. We've become very allergic to it, irrationally allergic to it after its many failures and incompetencies in the past 3 decades. And we've ignored times when it's probably helped, like Kosovo, like ISIS. People argue Libya. There are times when it definitely helped. Wars of revenge are not times when it's helped, like with Afghanistan. And wars of stupidity like Iraq are obviously the ones that we all remember. And we get that kind of fatigue from interventionism, and goes in cycles. We hated interventionism before we joined World War II, in that kind of like 1920s, 1930s era, Calvin Coolidge. And then after World War II, we got super interventionist, and then Bush happened, and we stopped being super interventionist. And now we have the rise of the do-nothing isolationists. So that is all very interesting.